but it's
Mhm.
really carving out that time to focus on the important tasks of building your business and making that a higher priority than the urgent fires at her desk.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Call Me CEO. I am your host, Camille Walker, and today we are talking with Jessica Fialkovich, who is the exit strategist when you are looking to sell a business. What do you do so that you know that your business could be sellable, and what are some mistakes to avoid? So, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot wait to dive into all of the things that you know. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for this conversation and just to connect with your audience and hopefully provide some value and insights.
So tell me how you got into this business of selling businesses, because I know that it happens all the time. In fact, I even have talked to brokers about selling my own blog a couple of times where I've been approached with someone, but that's like the extent of my experience of selling a business of my own. So tell us how you got involved in this and what led you down this path.
Yeah. So it's kind of like my entrepreneurial formation story, right? If you will.
Mm-hmm.
But I started my first business. I was actually in the wine and spirits industry. So we operated a retail store and an online website for collectors. So we sold like super high-end wine. I think the most expensive bottle we ever sold was like $25,000 for one bottle of wine. It was
Oh
crazy.
my gosh.
Yeah. So I started that business when I was 24 with my husband, and we got into it. It was super fun. I call it my early life crisis. And 3 years in, I was like, you know what? This is not for me. I just wanted out of the alcohol industry. There's a lot of regulation, a lot of hoops to jump through. And we were living in Florida at the time. And I love the beach, but I don't love humidity. It's not good for my hair. And I don't love bugs. So I was like, all right, we're done. We need to get out. And in the back of my mind, I was like, there's got to be a way you could sell a business. Like you can sell a piece of property. People sell businesses all the time, but I had no idea how to do it. So I searched out resources in our small market of Naples, Florida. I was introduced to like the one business broker that would represent our business because we were too small. And at that point, I think we were doing like about 3 million in revenue. So like we were a small business, but we're not super small, right? And we went through the process. We were very lucky to have a great financial exit, but the whole process was just like pulling teeth. Like our broker was, basically like a used car salesman. I didn't see him for most of the transaction except the closing table where he collected his commission check and tried to sell me life insurance in the same breath.
Oh my gosh.
So after that experience, I was like, why is this so hard for small business owners? Like, why do these big businesses get these investment bankers that are super sophisticated and have all these great resources, but small business doesn't get any of that? So that led me into my journey of starting a business brokerage firm with my husband now in Colorado. We also have offices in Dallas and Las Vegas 10 years ago, and we've become one of the top business brokers in the world. We do about 150 transactions a year, done well over hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions for our clients. So that's kind of what got me into the world. And now I'm branching out more into the education space, why we're talking today. But it was really, selling my own first small business and having kind of a negative experience. That's what we're always trying to find problems to solve as entrepreneurs. So that was my problem I wanted to solve.
Wow. Now take me through that process of starting a brokerage in the first place. How did you even know how to get into that space?
Yeah. So we did end up using a broker to sell our wine store. So I knew that space existed and I knew a little bit about the space. I did a little bit of research, like business brokerage there's like some small mom and pop shops and 1 or 2 man shops. Most of the market's dominated by a couple major franchise brands though. So when we got to Colorado, we started vetting the different franchise brands, and Transworld, who we're now a part of, we felt like was the best fit for us culturally, really valued that small business owner. And fortunately, actually, the office was in existence in Denver and was up for resale. So it was one of those like timing things and the universe telling you something.
Yeah.
So after having a couple different conversations with different franchise operations and vetting franchise versus doing it on our own, we decided Transworld was the best fit. But I was I was exposed to the business brokerage industry through the sale of my wine business.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And exactly like you said, as an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, that was awful. How can we make this better? And creating that space for other people. And obviously you're doing a good job of that as you are turning so many business sales into success. So we want to talk to our audience today about what does that look like as far as the steps of knowing how to set up your business so that it is viable for a sale, and what are the steps of selling a business? So could you take us through the process first of what are some good first steps about knowing what to do so that your business is set up for a sale if and when you ever decide to do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few key things. Actually, I just featured an article in Inc. magazine. There was 5 areas that I identified. And the first is keeping good books and records. So a lot of us, like, we kind of put the bookkeeping to the side and we do it on the weekends or the nights, but it's something that if you want your business to be not just sellable in the future, but if you ever want to take on investors, if you want to get financing, if you want to do any of those kind of things, you have to have good books and records. And that means profit and loss statements, balance sheets, filing on-time tax returns, things like that. And really having outside help to help you with that. I think more now than ever, there's so many great resources in terms of technology, freelancers, outsourcers that can do that bookkeeping for you, probably better than we can do it ourselves. So that's the first key area. The second one and the third one are kind of tied together, but it's about making the business not about us as the owners. And I know this is really hard to do, especially in the beginning, because in the beginning, the business is us. We're doing all the sales, we're doing all the delivery, everything like that. But over time, the less and less we can become involved in the business, the more valuable it is for sale, but also it's more stable. Right? If something happens to us, I had my first child last year. If I go on maternity leave, like I did, if I have a complication, my maternity leave turns into 5 or 6 months, which it did. Like, how does the business maintain that? So making it less and less about us over time reduces the risk of it, which makes it more valuable. And that third area that's tied into it is documenting our processes and systems. So we know that we can replace ourselves, but also another employee if someone were to leave. Number 4 is reputation. So I was just talking to my mentor and it's like, all right, I give up. This whole world is dominated by online reviews and there's nothing we can do about it, right? Everybody looks up reviews on everything now, from your Amazon products to the restaurant you're going to go to. So you just have to have a really good reputation for your business online. And that doesn't necessarily mean 5 stars on every platform. Like, I don't know about you, but if I see 5 stars, I'm like, they don't have a single person that had a negative experience. Like, are those other reviews real? Or so I'm always searching for like 4.7 stars, right? But really, really maintaining that. And the last is just keeping your legal agreements nice and tight and having legal agreements in your business. I think sometimes as small business owners, we think, oh, we're too small. We don't need a customer contract or we don't need an employee contract, but really we do. And that protects you if you want to sell in the future, but it also protects you now, right? If you do have something malicious happen in your business and unfortunately ever have to go down a legal route, you really need some tight contracts in your business. So I flew through those and I know those are super fast and we can dig into any of them further, but those are like the top 5 I see that really increase the likelihood you can sell your business and the value in the future.
No, I appreciate all of that. And I think what you are saying with each of those pieces, what I hear you say is involving professionals in other areas to support the business you're building. So whether that's the legal, the financial, the consulting, how do you feel about the trademark aspect of it? I recently did an interview about trademarking and having someone, representing you in that way. Is that something that comes to play when buying and selling as well?
Yeah, it definitely, like, intellectual property is a big deal. And sometimes a lot of people will ask me, like, does that add value to my company? And it doesn't really add value as much as it prevents decreasing of value, right? So if we think about it, we represented a client once and they had, it was doggy daycare business and they wanted to franchise it and they were in Colorado. But when we went to do the franchise paperwork with franchising, you have to trademark the name. And what we ran into is somebody in California had already trademarked that name. So now you've got to go through a whole rebrand process, which is very expensive, right? It doesn't matter how big you are, going through a rebrand is expensive. You've got to redo everything. So that's where I'm saying, like, it devalues the business because now someone else has to come in and do a whole rebrand. If they want to do the trademark, if they want to grow into a national brand, they want to grow into a franchise, those things are required. Like they have to trademark. So you don't want to have that risk. So trademarking as soon as you possibly can. Again, there's so many great professionals now. It's not complex. I'm a big fan of having, a dedicated lawyer you work with, but even like LegalZoom can do trademarks for you now. So
yeah. Yeah. And I just recorded an episode just a few back where they will do like an extensive search for you and be an ally of yours for a year, I think for $3,000 or something very affordable.
Like
yeah. So if you're looking for someone, go a few episodes back, listen to that one, because I think it deals very directly with that piece of your business that would give you so much peace of mind, knowing that that part is taken care of. And I'm curious for what you've seen as you're doing so many transactions. What are some of the biggest hangups that people have in those 5 steps that they typically are skipping over?
I think it's a really the one big hang up, and it comes to time, right? So we're so maxed on time as business owners, and there's so many business authors that talk about this, about the urgent versus the important, but it's really carving out that time to focus on the important tasks of building your business and making that a higher priority than the urgent fires that hit our desk, right? So, things like we went through, like, what's the strategy for you to get out of the operator seat? Like that's just as important as doing your next client call or your next sales call. And, having that time. And I tell my consulting clients, like, we're not talking about, blocks of time. Like we're talking about like an hour or 2 a week. If you can just carve out an hour or 2 a week of this is like your CEO time, this is your thinking time. That's what's necessary, but that's the hardest thing for us all to do, because it's also like, it's not a scheduled time that you and I have that we're going to meet on Zoom or meet for a coffee. It's one of those like moving blocks where like,
yes.
Oh, well, I'll do this on a Friday, but then a client wants that call. I'm like, oh, I'll move it to Wednesday. And then, I'll move it to 2 weeks from now. It's just being disciplined to have that. But that's the roadblock I see with almost every business owner. It doesn't matter the size of the company.
That is so fascinating to me. And also a reason why I offer the coaching that I do. I coach business owners with offboarding, like getting virtual assistants in your business so that you can use your time to establish the main parts of the business that only you can do. And that's also why I train moms to become virtual assistants if you're looking for a job, because everyone needs you, like everyone. So if you're looking at either side of that coin, that's why I've built the business I have, is because so often as entrepreneurs and business owners, we put those things to the side that really need doing because we're in the minutia of the day-to-day tasks or the fires, like you said. So that's so fascinating, especially as you say, no matter the size of the business. Like, what I'm curious with your experience, what has been the smallest business that you have sold in a brokerage, and what has been the biggest? Like, what kind of a scale are we looking at?
Yeah. So when I talk about size, we talk about the valuation numbers, not necessarily revenue. So
revenue,
valuation is like a really crazy methodology, but just think about it. Like the valuation on average just is like half, and that's of what the revenue is. And that's across all industry sizes, whatever. It's not a good metric to use as a valuation. But so the smallest business we've sold is $10,000 in value. And the largest one we've sold is 30 million in value. So yeah. So it's a big scale, but when I was talking about like the market, how businesses are sold. So usually when you're going to work with a professional, you'd be like, oh, you've experience in my industry. And in business brokerage and investment banking, it's not so much the industry, it's about the size of the company. So the niches are split into tiers. So most business brokers represent businesses up to 20 to 30 million in valuation. Most investment bankers have a floor or a minimum deal size of about 20 to 30 million. So that goes into the boutique investment banking world. And then those large multinational, multi-billion-dollar deals we see, those are done by the large investment banks on Wall Street. So yeah, it's a big range, but the average business we sell is worth just below about $1 million. It's like the average or the median sale we do. But what I find is really interesting is 96% of all the businesses that are sold in the US every year are below $1 million. So we all think about like these big transactions that we see on Wall Street, or we hear Facebook buying some new app for some crazy multiple, but really most of the industry are small businesses that are worth less than $1 million, that are doing less than $1 million in revenue. It's a lot of those, closer in that $10, $100, $200,000 price point, not the multi-millions.
Yeah. Well, I love that you made a point of saying that, because I think either whether you're interested in maybe potentially buying a business and or selling a business, it doesn't mean that these rules only apply to those who are doing the millions and billions. It applies to all of us, which is really helpful to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And look, those things that we talked about, those 5 ways to increase the likelihood, it doesn't have to be perfect. And to be honest, you can still sell a business without those 5 things being done. It's just more difficult, and it's going to suppress your value. But I'm a big proponent of like every business has some value. It really breaks my heart anytime like I drive by and see like a going out of business sign or something that's closed up shop, because every business has some type of value in it, whether it's like physical hard assets and tangible assets, something. Now, look, it might not be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it might be 10,000, 20,000. And that's meaningful to a business owner or their investors, right? That's something versus just closing up shop. And then we're also like, if we take it further, like we're saving jobs for the people that worked for us. If we transition that business to a new owner, we're saving hassle for customers to go find a new location to do business at. And we're saving like the impact to our local community. Right. So it's something that I'm super passionate about. I think a lot of people undervalue their businesses, and they also, don't understand that they're actually sellable, even if they're not perfect. Right.
Or the steps to take. Yeah.
Yep.
So
exactly.
what would you say some of the biggest mistakes are that you see when people are trying to prepare their business to sell, or have come to you and you're like, oh man, if you had done XYZ, this would have been so much easier?
Yeah. So the first is they wait too long, right? The majority of the businesses that come to us to sell are like, they need to sell today. Right. And we're talking like majority, like 95%. And what happens when you put yourself in that situation is you're in such a time crunch. And usually this happens because of something personal going on in our lives. It could be something really horrific, like a health issue or something like that, or it could just be burnout or another opportunity, which is the most common reason to sell. But so what happens is they wait too long, and then we do have a suppression of value or sometimes trouble finding the right buyer. Versus if they had put some of those things, those 5 things we talked about, in place years in advance, or even 6 months in advance leading up to a sale, then it would be a much different situation than we're talking about. And a lot of people that I talk to put off this work of preparing for sale until the point they're like, well, I'm not ready yet. Right. Like I just talked to a prospect the other day and they're like, well, I think I'm going to sell in 3 years, but I'm not ready to prepare yet. Like I'll do that in another year. And I'm like, well, okay, so we're talking about increasing profitability of your business and efficiency in your business, right? Which we all want. So why not do that now? And also, like, none of us know when we're going to sell. Like, let's just be honest. There's like all these exit planners and strategists will put together these perfect plans in place and give us like a 3 to 5 year strategy. But I mean, I think what we've seen in our world more so in the last 2 years than anything is we have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring us. So running your business like you're going to sell it at any given time is just good practice, right? It gives you more profit, but it also, if that day comes, you're ready to go. So that's the number one mistake I see people make. The second one is just expectations. I talked about there's a lot of people that undervalue their business. There's also a lot of people that overvalue their business. It's very rare that I have somebody that guesses exactly what their business is worth, but getting stuck in the ego part of being a business owner and thinking what you've built is so valuable versus listening to what the market's telling you. Right. So everything does have a value. And a lot of the businesses that don't sell, that try to do, is because of this expectation misalignment. And they get caught up in the like, well, and I joke all the time, everybody thinks their business is worth round numbers, like $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, right? It's never like, $372,000. Right. So like getting caught up in this, well, I've built this for so long and so hard, and I deserve $1 million. Well, you're getting an offer at 500. I mean, we've watched clients walk away with nothing because they got so stuck on the number that they wanted versus what the market was telling them what it was worth. So those are the 2 like biggest mistakes I've seen. There's a lot of others, but those two mistakes would probably resolve most of the issues in the sale process.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how we all invest so much emotion and energy and blood, sweat, tears, as they say. So to have an unbiased third party come in and say, well, let's do an analysis and see what the market says. Because of course, I think whether someone's business was valued at 10,000 or at the true million, we all think, oh, I wish I could get $1 million back for this because of how much you've given into it, And so I really appreciate that insight, because I think it's really easy to get emotionally attached to an ideal number.
Yeah. And if we go back to some of those stats, like only 4% of businesses sell for over $1 million. Like, think about how rare that is, right? And I know we get caught up in the news and the media about these big sales. And part of the reason you don't hear about the small sales is because they're all private and confidential and they're not disclosed. So that's why you never hear about the majority of these transactions that are happening. So we talked about our average deal size, but the average deal size, this website Biz Buy Sell tracks, is usually it floats around like $230,000. Like, that's the average size that businesses sell for across the US, not these multi-million and billion-dollar transactions that we hear about in the news.
What would you say is a good way for us to safeguard against, we're just coming off the heels of the pandemic. Yeah. And that we unfortunately saw so many businesses that did go out of business. Do you think that there could have been more preventative measures in place? Or do you think that that's something that life happens and sometimes it just is what it is? Like, what advice would you give to people in anticipation or preparation for something like that?
Yeah. It's probably one of the more horrific business experiences that hopefully any of us have to go through. Like, look, there's so much that you can do to prepare for like recessions or even depressions. But a lot of the things that I read and how I was coached through the pandemic is no one ever expected like business to turn off like this, right? Mm-hmm. There's no preparation guide for that. So I think what helped me through the pandemic, and we came out pretty thriving, which was impressive because on March 14th, when the world shut down, at least in Colorado, and I know that because it was my birthday, but overnight, we lost all of our pipeline. 100% of the pipeline was gone in 24 hours. Right. So I dove in, but what really helped me was I had two very strong mentors that had industry experience in my industry and more life experience than I had. Right. So they had been through a number of recessions and things like that. And they were able to coach me in that week of having the right mentors, taking action and being adaptable was probably what saved our business. Now, leading up to that too, like we did other things, like I'm a big fan of having cash reserves, right? And having, expenses that you can turn on and turn off. And, but there's a lot of things when you can have all that in place, but when, something like that happens, you have to be adaptable and you have to take action no matter how hard it was. We called our whole team together and we said, basically, like, look, we can either lay two of you off, or everybody can take a temporary pay cut that will pay you back once everything bounces back. And we gave them kind of a vote, right? Ultimately, we were going to make the right decision for the business and our people. But like, we had that meeting. So our world shut down on March 14th, which is, I think it's Saturday. We had that meeting at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. So taking action before all of our cash reserves and everything was drained, right? And not just continuing to run the business on our cash reserves, knowing we had no money coming in potentially for the next 60 or 90 days.
And then what did you do after? Well, I'm just curious, like, so what happened? What did you do? What did you vote on? How did that play out?
Yeah. So the team made the decision we wanted to, which was to cut salaries. So we cut all of our owner salaries 100%. We cut our directors and above at a higher percentage than our entry-level staff. And we just went back to work and tried to save the business and save our deals. After the shock of everything wore off in like 3 or 4 weeks, our deals started to come back. So by the end of June, we were back to normalized. And that's when we reimbursed all of our employees the back pay of what they needed. So yeah,
that's quite a quick recovery. I'm so proud of you guys. That's incredible.
And we shaved expenses, right? So it wasn't just salaries. Like, we cut off everything that was non-essential to the business. And like, when I'm talking non-essential, like non-essential. And it was actually like a really good practice. And this is something I recommend to a lot of our clients through my consulting firm now, is to go through our expenses once a quarter, because we have like this expense creep that creeps up, and we start thinking, and I mean, I know this is true for me. I start thinking, oh, like this ad spend is essential, right? Or this membership is essential. But if we put ourselves in the shoes of like, hey, what if I was going through another pandemic? Is this actually essential, right? Is it actually producing results? And we start cutting those things that aren't essential and that aren't working, our profitability goes up immediately, right? So it was actually a very eye-opening exercise for me. And it's now something we do once a quarter. And it's made me a lot more ruthless in where we're spending our expenses.
That is such good advice. I'm just like the experience that you had and then being able to apply it to yourself and giving that advice to others is huge. Because I think about even in our personal lives or our business, I'm going through in my mind, and I'm sure those who are listening are too, of what am I paying for? Because I think that creep of, it just stacks on like, oh, that's a good idea. It's only, $25 a month here or $200 a year there or whatever. Like, that is such a good point to be made. I'm sure you've saved a lot of people a lot of money with that advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's tools too. You can also like benchmark your business against the industry and see versus your competitors and the same size business you are, like, are you overspending in some areas, or maybe you're underspending in some areas, right? So there's tools that you can use to do that too.
And what are those tools that you use for those types of things?
We have a relationship with a company called BizMiner that provides those reports for our clients. So, but you can also just do some research, like Google's a powerful thing, right? To see like, especially if you're in a popular industry, like, what's the average percentage staffing companies spend on recruiting services? Like, you can find out some of your key things. One of the other really big pieces of advice one of my mentors gave me through the pandemic was like, not to focus on all of your expense line items, right? But start with the big ones, because that's where you can provide the most impact and control. So if one of your highest expenses is staffing or marketing, that's where you focus first, versus like, arguing with Verizon over your cell phone bill, right? We'll start with your big categories. And that's where like you really need to prioritize your control versus trying to focus on every single line item on your P&L.
I love that. It's almost like the snowball effect of paying off your debts. Start with the biggest one first and then work your way down. Yeah. That's so helpful. I know that that's going to help so many people just hearing that advice. Well, I want to switch gears just a little bit, because you are a recent mother. Yes. And what a joy it is. I'm so happy for you. You said he's 8 months old. Tell our audience about your little guy and what it is to be a mother.
Yeah. So we had my son Brix in October of 2021 after trying to start a family for 6 years. So he's our little IVF miracle. We're so blessed to have him in our lives, but yeah, he'll be 8 months this week. He started crawling last week. This week he's pulling to a stand already. So I joke, he's so my husband's child, because my husband has this like uncontainable amount of energy, and I can already see it in my little one, which is such a blessing. Also a little bit of a curse for me, because I'm already like chasing him around. I'm like, oh my God, I thought I had more time.
What would you say, like, as far as, and congratulations, best day ever. What would you say how it has affected you as a woman becoming a mother, and also how you're able to navigate your business time and your time as mom?
Yeah. I mean, from the business perspective, it's made me a lot more efficient. And I'll use that ruthless term again, a lot more ruthless in like how I'm spending my time. Because so we have a full-time nanny who's wonderful, but she's here 4 full days a week and 1 half day. And that's my time. Like I have to get everything done in that time. And the rest of my time is dedicated to my family. And so I have to be a lot more efficient in how I choose to use that time. Right. And what I say yes to and what I say no to, because it's defined. Whereas before I would just work whenever, right? I'd work when I was bored. I'd work whatever. And then also like my perspectives changed a lot, is like, what do I want my life to look like? Like, how do I want to spend my time? I want my son to grow up knowing that like his parents were able to not do it all, but they were able to, achieve things and be great parents. Right. but also it's changed my perspective of before I'd be like, oh, I need to build a big business, like be number one, all this stuff. And now it's like, all right, what am I trying to get out of my business and out of my life? So I've got these 5 goals on my board. I'm staring at them right in front of me. But I used to have like 25 goals and be like, write a bestseller and travel the world and all this stuff. And now I've just limited it down to 5. And it's optimizing like my health, my self-care, fun, our family financial freedom, and family love and time. And that's just what my world's about now. And so like, if it doesn't fit into one of those 5 buckets, then is it really necessary? Right. So I don't know. My perspective has just changed a lot. And everyone told me it would, but I don't think I realized the impact he would have.
Well, that's incredible. Just to know that you have such a clear understanding of that ruthlessness of how you want to use your time and build the kind of business you want and the life that you want. I think that is so beautiful. And I've learned so much from you today. I know our listeners have too. Please tell them where they can find you and also how to connect with you if they're looking to buy or sell a business.
Yeah. The best way to connect with me is through our website, which is exitfactor.com. I'm also on social media at Jessica Fialkovich, most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And even if you spell my last name wrong, there's only one of me in the world. So I usually come up pretty easily.
Hey, not a lot of people can say that where you're the only one. You have been such an amazing guest. I have learned so much and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed our conversation too.
Hey, did you hear the news? 60 days to VA is no longer something you have to wait for to enroll. I'm actually starting to bring on students one by one. It's a very personal interaction where I do a discovery call with you to see if 60 days to VA is a good fit for you. Because in the end, on the flip side of things, I'm starting to do matchmaking with CEOs who are looking to hire virtual assistants. So if that's something that you feel like is a good fit for you, you want to become your own boss and start a business that you can do on your terms and with your schedule so you can spend that purposeful time with your kids, reach out to me. You can book your time at camillewalker.co, or you can DM me at camillewalker.co or Call Me CEO podcast, and we can set up a time to chat. I can't wait to talk with you. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so. And also know that if you are looking for help in coaching with building your business or growing your business by taking on new assistants in your business, please reach out to me. That's the coaching that I do for women in business every single day. I can also help you build your own virtual assistant business if you are looking for a way to build a business from home where you can still have the flexibility of being with your kids in those special, important moments. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time.